And the Lord spoke to me, and he said, I am the mighty King. I am the Lord of everything. What was it? I am the mighty King. I am master of everything. I am Lord. And as soon as I said, oh, Christy goes, my heart went back to normal. Ephesians 6:10, be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. Put on the full armor of God so that you can resist the schemes of the devil. And what's the first piece of the armor of God? Everybody says that. You got it. You're one of the few people. Everybody says it's the helmet of salvation. It's not. It's the belt of truth. And the truth, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He is truth. So we have a choice to believe his word, no matter what it looks like, no matter what it sounds like, no matter what is taking place, or we can believe what we hear. And the belt of truth, what does truth do? You shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. And he who the Son sets free is free indeed. So Christy, after this, and after we had won the battle, Christy's heart would start racing. 200 beats a minute. And once we won the battle the second time, if we started coming against it spiritually to break it off, like I had before, like the couple years before, now if I did it, instead of us breaking the power of darkness, it would get worse. It would start going higher. And all of a sudden, God started speaking to me, and I said, Christy, you've already got it. You're redeemed. You're already free. Your heart's free. No weapon formed against you will prosper. The shield of faith extinguishes all the arrows of the enemy. So instead of us coming against it like we had for the past 2 years, now we just said, wait a minute. Your heart's already free. You're already redeemed. They're already defeated. Now I start speaking faith to her. And guess what happened? Her heartbeat went, boom, it's back to normal. Because now it's by faith. Now we've won the battle. Now it's just maintaining it. And it is by faith in order it may be in accordance with grace. And so that's what God started doing. He started shifting it to by faith. So she's been growing in that maturity. But even when we were in Tulsa, her heart got hit, and it got hit a few times. And so it had to be by faith. Well, she was doubting because her heart was being hit. And so here's something that happened. Her heart started racing. And God spoke to me, and he said, because before, she would just start walking in faith. Okay, it doesn't exist. I'm healed. I'm redeemed. And it would take a few hours, and it would break. This time, the Lord told me it's not going to happen by faith. It has nothing to do with faith. And I started reprimanding her as a woman of God and as her mother to knock it off. You're redeemed. Stop tempting God, because it tells us that we're not to test God. And she was testing God by walking in disobedience and not believing his word, but believing what she felt and her heart. And her heart just kept racing. And I just knew it wasn't going to go back by faith. And so about 2 o'clock in the morning, she actually came down and got in bed with me. She was scared. It's a scary thing to have your heart racing at 200 beats a minute. And so she was scared. And she got in bed, and I started contemplating it, and going over, okay, God, it's not by faith. I had rebuked her, and I had told her that it was a rebuke of the Lord, and that she better start walking by faith, or she was going to suffer the ramifications of not. And that God was chastising her, saying, stop it. Stop walking by faith. Stop opening up the door to the enemy, because anything not of faith is sin. And so she was opening up the door through sin, of disbelief, of not believing God. And so anyway, about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I was contemplating and going, okay, God, well, this is kind of new. I know it's not by faith. You know, maybe I got to start battling in the morning. Maybe they got a hook. Maybe I've got to start coming against it spiritually. And the Lord spoke to me and he said, I am the mighty King. I am the Lord of everything. What was it? I am the mighty King. I am master of everything. I am Lord. And as soon as I said, oh, Christy goes, my heart went back to normal. Because God was saying, I am God. You know, I am the mighty King. I am Lord of everything. I am God. And boom, it went back. Now, when we were a year prior, okay, let me bring in this part. We had won 3/5. Okay, right away within the first through 13, we won 3/5 of it. We won the power of attorney back, we won the meat back, and the necklace. The meat was substance, spiritual substance. The power of attorney, the right of access, and the necklace, my children and my family, including my husband. And of course, you guys know what the money and the clock represented timing. Okay, that's simple. So we had won 3/5. And I kept saying, what about the other 2/5? You know, my family was saying, no, all the battles are done. But I go, but we still never won the clock or the timing. And so remember, God said you may not make it through. There's one member of our family that's missing. And I'm telling you, there's a reality to warfare. My husband did not make it. My husband, believe it or not, became a warlock. Started practicing witchcraft, turned his life over to the enemy. So in 14, the Lord had told me we were having a little bit of a trouble because I'd let a witch into our midst. And I had taken her with me to Meridian Falls. I go there a lot. You guys know where Meridian Falls, Bob Jones, all that, North Carolina. And so I'd gone there, and at that time, he revealed that the woman that was with me was a witch, and that was to cut her off, and that's why we were having a bout of trouble. And so when I got home, gone. I don't have anybody in my life that I won't cut off. I don't. Now, my kids, you know, I spanked her at it's okay, I made it through. Turned her over my knee about 4 years ago. And spanked her because I was so mad, you know, and just a huge battle. So in 14, the Lord told me we had this witch in our midst to get rid of her. Gone. I don't even look back. I don't even care. And so she went after my husband. Jim had always been one that compromised in sin. And I'm telling you this because not to put him down, but to tell you the realness of compromising with sin, the realness of being lukewarm, the realness of not giving your whole heart to God and serving God with all your heart. Because honest to God, there's consequences to it. You know, I didn't make up those rules, God did. And so anyway, he went after her. And in 15, the Lord told me to divorce him. And I thought, but he's getting better from the outside. You know, I went by what I looked. I thought, but he looks like he's getting better. And God said, no, divorce him. I said, well, God, you don't believe in divorce, so I need confirmation that this is you. And he said, okay. Within just a few days, my son found huge pornography on his phone. Huge. Numerous. And confronted him with it. It wasn't just a little, it was buku. Within a couple days, he got physically violent with our lawyer and went into a rage. Lies started coming out. I mean, God you know, I don't want to tell you them all, but it was enough. It confirmed it. I hadn't even seen that side of him. God had told me a few years ago to keep my hands off of him, that he'd work on him. And so I backed up, and I wasn't perfect. I mean, I'd slip, but I had backed up 95%. And so God just started, there was several things. I said, okay, God. So I'm on my way home, and God told me to do it that day, and my heart was still not in it. I mean, this wasn't my idea. I hadn't contemplated it. It wasn't something that I came up with. It was something God said do. So I'm driving home, even after he'd showed me all that. And like I said, there was more. And God said, tell him today. And I'm thinking about it. And the Lord interrupted my thoughts. And he said, remember. And he reminded me of a time that I disobeyed him back in 1999. And that it had severe consequences. And I didn't obey at that time, because here's what the Lord told me to do at that time. He told me in a big church in Salem to walk up the middle aisle of the church during church service and rebuke the pastor. And of a big church of 1,500 people, walk down the center aisle, walk up during his message and rebuke him and a bunch more. I thought, that's not right. You don't do that. That's not godly. And I had this battle, but God had been giving vision, word for several months about the timing. And I knew it was God, but truthfully, I tried. I went there. I sat in the aisle. I started to get up and couldn't. I feared man. And I kept thinking, what are they going to think of me? And I can't do that. They'll kick me out. They'll do this. They'll do that. And I mean, Chuck Pierce and Dutch Sheets had confirmed it, that he was a Shebna. All this confirmation, but I couldn't do it. And the ramifications were huge. And then, I wanted to justify myself because, yeah, you guys agree with me. That doesn't seem like the right thing to do. And so I said, God, give me confirmation. And 3 years went by, and I went to get my hair cut. I'm kind of condensing this because I know time's here, but there's more. But I went to get my hair cut, and it was too expensive. And I go, wait a minute, that woman has a word for me. And so I said, make the appointment. And I made the appointment. And she had gone to that same church. And 15 years prior to what had happened to me when I didn't do it, that church had gone through at another time, and that prophet did do it. And she said that's what that church needed, even though it seemed, out of bounds. It seemed like a crazy thing. She said the pastor was walking in, and it turned out really good because they obeyed God. I didn't obey God. So when God told me to divorce Jim, and he said, remember, and he named the church. Remember when you disobeyed me, because it didn't seem like the right thing to do. So I said, yes, Lord. And so I did. God provided everything. It went really quick. And then we didn't know about the witch at this time. A few months went by, and my son's going through, I don't even know why he did. It was a God moment. He went through and found our Verizon bill, and there were numerous phone calls between the witch and Jim during this interim. And we had lost the only spiritual battle I've ever lost. We lost. We had lost a battle, and God said it's by faith. It's faith in the cross. You always hear faith and patience. The cross has to be involved in it too. And I said, God, can you show me that? And he gave me Galatians 3:13 and 14. Christ has redeemed you from the curse of the law, having become a curse for you, for it is written, cursed is everyone that hangs on a tree. That's your salvation. In order that in Christ Jesus, the blessing of Abraham might come upon you, so you would receive the promise of the Spirit through faith. That was the faith. So Galatians 3:13 and 14. And so we cannot, and God showed me this, the reason we lost that battle, you cannot walk in the things of God and be walking in sin. Do you know what I'm saying? It nullifies the cross. I mean, God says if you continue practicing sin after you've come to the knowledge, of it, there no longer remains a sacrifice for you. And that's what God was showing me. Yeah, because you're full of sin, and yet you're pretending to be a Christian to walk it out. So you can't live a life of sin and expect the benefits of walking with God. And so God showed me that. So anyway, Jim leaves in 2015, June. He finds the stuff that Jim's been communicating with this witch. Jim's already gone. all of a sudden, my son gets horrifically tired, and he goes into bed, and he's not waking up. And I go check on him, and I said, Miles, are you okay? Yeah, I'm just tired. Well, it didn't seem right, so I went to the bedroom and started praying, and I released the Holy Spirit to break what was ever happening. And I saw a vision. I saw this light go out. I thought, and I felt the peace. Everything was okay. So I went out and talked to Christy in the living room, and all of a sudden, Christy gets a phone call after about 15 minutes, and it's Miles. He can't wake up. He barely had enough strength to dial my number. He just hit the number, and yeah. And he said, I need Mom. And so I went back there. He had no strength. His sleep, he was dying. I don't know how to say it. He was going deeper and deeper into sleep, and he kept hearing thoughts, just go ahead and die. It's all right. It'll be easier. Just go ahead and die. And he was getting less strength. He was like, how do you explain it? He was slipping away. He was losing consciousness. His body was just dying. And so I came in with the blood and started breaking it, and it took a little bit, and he also had to resist, and he got up, and I heard the word betrayal, and the Lord revealed it was Jim, that he had tried to kill Miles. And so Mama Bear does get mad. And Mama Bear, after we get Miles back to being Miles and it's broken off, I call him. Because right now I have no proof, except for what God has said, that he has become a warlock. And so I call him and I said, what are you doing? I mean, why are you walking away from God? You've walked with God. You've seen the power of God. You've seen the dead raised. You've seen people get hit spiritually. What are you doing? Practicing witchcraft, and on top of it, trying to kill your own son. I said, have you contemplated, what did I ask him? Have you weighed the cost? And he said, yes, I have. And he said, and I said, are you going to continue, being warlike? Yes. And I don't even know why you called me. Now leave me alone. He admitted it. He said, yes, he's weighed the cost. Yes, he's happy practicing witchcraft, and to leave him alone. So I said, okay. We started praying for him. I mean, they're heartbroken. His dad's turned against me. His dad's become a warlock and is practicing witchcraft. And so, we were praying, but every time Miles would start praying for him, he'd get hit. And he tried 2 more attempts on his life, and then, that was it. He tried 1 on Christy, 1 or 2. 1. So 1 on Christy, 3 on Miles, tried to kill him in the same way, kill them. So now we're in 16, I believe. Yeah, we're in 16. So we win that battle, and now we're in June of 17. We won the battle. We found out who our enemy was. Also, the enemies were also Lucifer's daughters. They're in Portland. They're the ones that were the main thrust of the F5. So now I go up to see. Do you guys know Harold Eberly? Okay, Harold's been here. So I've known Harold forever. And Miles and I go up there to see Harold. And Miles wanted a word. I ended up getting a word. Miles was kind of miffed at me. It wasn't my fault. And so we're just waiting there the next day. We went and saw Harold just to say goodbye to him, and we're waiting until he gets done. And Harold walks up to us, and he says, Margaret, I see you uprooting. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? I had no clue what he was talking about, so we just continued talking as friends, and everything. And somehow moving was brought up, and he goes, yeah. He said, I see you moving, Margaret. He said, God's uprooting you. And the one thing that I gained was my house. I had a beautiful home in Monmouth. I mean, beautiful home. It was my dad's home. I inherited it. So one thing they couldn't take. He was the contractor. He built the whole subdivision, so he picked the best lot, for his retirement. It overlooked the country, and it had city behind him, and it was just a beautiful place. I loved it. And it was the first time that I felt like home. Plus, I had my parents. I was in my parents' home. So I was like rooted. And I thought, well, so yay, we talked with Harold and yay, that sounds great. And then we left and said, wait a minute, I don't want to leave my dad's house. God wouldn't ask me to do that. He just gave it to me. I just got that part saved. He wouldn't do that. It must not be of God. Harold must have missed it. We go down to Texas and we're there the next week. And a week from the day, Kenneth Copeland speaks. And I had gotten into a fight with my son and daughter because they thought they had confirmation from Jerry Savelle, because Jerry talked about leaving your father's house and Abraham. And I said, look, that may be confirmation to you, but that is not confirmation to me. And they were kind of pushing. And I said, where would I move? I'm not moving without knowing where I'm going. I could move across the street and say, there, I moved. I'm not moving. I was a little miffed. And so the next morning at 9 a.m., Kenneth says, open up your Bible, Genesis 12. And he says, you're supposed to leave your father's house. He said, and I know what you're thinking. He goes, you don't want to move without knowing where you're going. I busted out laughing because I knew he's speaking to me. I mean, with Harold on one Sunday and him on the next Sunday. And yeah, everything I had said to them the night before, Kenneth spoke the next morning. And I busted out laughing. And he goes, I don't know what that had to do with my sermon. It doesn't. He goes, but that was for somebody. And he wanted into a sermon. And it was for me. So we got ready. We prayed and fasted. I put it up in December. I took it down in January. I couldn't do it. I backed out. God said, will you go through the F5? The F5 was not as hard as selling my dad's house. It was bigger to me. So anyway, we put it back up in May, and God says you're going to sell it, and we sold it in June, the next June. We go to Missouri. Now, here's the cool part. This is why I had to tell you this. We go to Missouri. We get there in August. September 1st, I have 4 dreams. The first dream, don't get mad at me. It wasn't me. The first dream, God spoke and said that the church has been raining peanuts for the past few years. Okay, so you guys know what that means, right? Please don't make me go there. Raining peanuts. There hasn't been much substance in what's been happening in the church for the past few years. So, and he said, roll up the window. We're not going to continue this. Roll up the window. The next one was Chuck Pierce appeared to me in a vision, and it was a split screen, and he was talking to me on the telephone, and he says, I want you guys to go to Texas. And he says, you go to Texas immediately. And he says, Christy's not going to want to go. He said, but no, it needs to be all 3 of you. And he had her pegged. And so the next one was about hold your fingers up. And the fingers are what? Your feelings. They're what you feel with. So God was telling me, hold up your fingers. Other people are going to try to bend your fingers. Don't let them. And the next one was that we'd already won the F5. Now there was the backlash. A red Chinese dragon, and I had to rebuke it and take authority over it. So it was a huge dragon. It appeared in the sky. So those are the 4 things he told me. So we got ready. About a week and a half later, we went to Texas, and the day that we got there, we won the timing. We won the timing, and we still had the money to go. So God tells us about 3 or 4 weeks later to go to Moravian Falls, and so we do. So now we're there, and we're interceding, and we win the money back. But at the same time we win the money back, the Lord told me that there's going to be an attack coming out of the sky, and he likened it to, have you ever seen those old movies where someone's going up one of those winding roads, like, before they had the guardrails, and if a car goes by, you have to squeeze by because there's not enough room, and it's really kind of dangerous and everything, but you hold your breath, but you make it. Remember those movies? Okay, so it was like that. God showed me we were going to have to squeeze in, but we were going to barely make it by. But if I would rebuke it and take authority over it, we would win. And that the spiritual realm was waiting to see if timing was going to move forward, because we may not make it. And so we're thinking, what does that hit? We talked about the next morning, yay, we won all 5 things, but there's also this hit. And so about noon, they start talking about, guess what? A tornado. and and so I've never been in a tornado before, so I really didn't know what one looked like. And it started getting really windy about 3 or 4 o'clock, about 3. And this is in Moravian Falls. And 4 o'clock, it's getting worse. And at 5 o'clock, it's getting really bad. You can sit there. They had a bank of windows all along this side in Grace's house and a bank of windows on that side. And you could watch the leaves. It almost seemed like they were going around the house. Miles is going, yeah, they were. And so I just called them and said, do you think this is a tornado? I mean, it's pretty bad. It looks like they're whirling. And even before they answered, it came over my cell phone. You're in the whatever center of the tornado. Take cover now, immediately. And so we went down the stairwell, and the stairwell was locked. We tried. There was a basement apartment, and we couldn't go anywhere. And it's really swirling. I can look up the stairwell and watch it, and I'm kind of mesmerized by it, because I've never been in one, and it's pretty horrific. And Christy says, don't you think we ought to pray like it said in the dream? And I said, good idea. And so we started rebuking it and taking authority over it. And it only took about 3 or 4 minutes, and we heard this crash on the roof, and rain was coming in. I mean, rain was coming through the house, in the living room, down the stairwell. It was raining in the house because of the cracks that were happening from the wind that was sucking it up. And we heard this sound like a crash, and we thought it was a large tree. And then all of a sudden, everything went, just like you turn on a light switch, just boom, it was gone. And we thought, are we in the center of it, or is it gone? Because we only prayed for like 4 minutes, maybe 5. It wasn't very long. And we kind of waited a couple minutes, is this going to start up? And then we went upstairs. Here's what we found out. Remember how God said you were going to just squeeze by? There was no tree on the roof. No tree had fallen. We called people up to look at it. That loud crash that we heard was the roof coming back down. When it sat back down, it was a cocoon, like it crashed. That's what we heard. That's how close we were to that roof sucking off. It was already in the process. Couple more seconds. I don't know how long, but it wasn't good. So trees were down all over, electricity. I mean, it was really, really bad. And we said, let's leave here and go to DC and have fun. And what we did. But Don Potter, I don't know if you guys know him. You know Don? Don had been scheduled for that weekend when we were in DC to go to Jesus Pursuit in Albany and to do a conference. And he had to cancel it because that tornado picked up off us and went down into the town and raised havoc. They pulled up trees all over the place. But I talked to Emily, who is Denny Klein's daughter from Jesus Pursuit. I don't know if you guys know. Okay. And Dawn had known that tornado was spiritual, that it was a spiritual tornado, and it was an attack on somebody.